Hey, gorgeous. Welcome to Season 3 of the Hormone P.U.Z.Z.L.E Podcast. I'm your host, Coach Kayla Smith, CEO of the Hormone P.U.Z.Z.L Society, a women's health hub for fertility, hormones, and pregnancy, an integrative, holistic nutritionist, doctor of natural medicine and training, creator of the Hormone P.U.Z.Z.L method, an infertility warrior, two-time boy mom, and women's health expert. This podcast is for women struggling with infertility, painful periods, terrible PMS, or really just any symptoms of hormone imbalance that they are ready to eliminate for good. Tune in weekly as we interview amazing experts in the field of women's health, breaking down those hormone walls, nerding out on nutrition, and having way too much fun. Whether you're beginning your journey or you've been struggling for years, we're going to finally help you put those pieces of your hormone puzzle back together so that you can get pregnant and eliminate those pesky symptoms for good. Not to mention, stay pregnant, have a healthy super baby, and easy postpartum. Are you ready? This season is packed with even more expert guests, sharing groundbreaking knowledge, giving you that jolt of energy that you so desperately need, sending you lots of virtual hugs, and inspiring you to take your fertility into your own hands and make that baby. Thank you all so much for tuning in and being amazing listeners. So now let's get started on your road to transformation. On today's show, I have Dr. Nicola Sykes, formerly Rinaldi. She is the lead author on the book, No Period, Now What?, which is geared towards helping people with missing or irregular cycles understand why their period is missing or delayed and what to do about it. Dr. Sykes has worked with people on period recovery for over 15 years and is widely regarded as an expert in her field. Her book describes the all-in method for period recovery that has been widely successful. Dr. Sykes is a scientist by training, now working as a period recovery coach to provide one-on-one guidance to people looking to recover. On today's show, we are going to talk about hypothalamic amenorrhea, HA for short, and Dr. Nicola's book, No Period, Now What? Now, without further ado, I would love to welcome Dr. Nicola to the show. Hey, Nicola, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's so nice to meet you and get a chance to chat with you today. I'm really looking forward to it.
Me too. So let's dive into things. Tell me a little bit more about you. What inspired you to work in women's health and to write the book, No Period, Now What?
So it's actually a really interesting journey because I went to graduate school for computational biology. I sort of grew up in the biotechnology industry, and so I worked there for a few years after I finished college to kind of figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And I decided computational biology was a good place for me because it would allow me to have some flexibility in terms of, having a family and not having to work at a lab bench. So I did that in graduate school. And at the same time, I was, my husband at the time was a consultant, and so he was away all the time. And so I would spend my time in lab and exercising. I played volleyball and ice hockey, and I would ride my bike to and from Cambridge, and I would play squash with my lab mates, and it was a lot of fun. And then towards the end of my graduate career, a bunch of the guys in my lab were like, "Oh, we're going to lose some weight." I was like, "That's perfect. Like, I have these love handles I want to get rid of." And I was starting to think about getting pregnant, and I was just reading everywhere, like, lose weight to have a healthy pregnancy, lose weight to have an easier time getting pregnant. And so like, boom, like my two things line up. This is going to be awesome. So I started monitoring my calories, and I lost a lot of weight in a very short amount of time. I mean, with the amount of exercise that I was doing and the restriction, it was very unhealthy. I recognize now, but at the time I was like, this is amazing. I look so good, blah, blah, right. Blah. And then I had been on the birth control pill, and I went off the pill to try and get pregnant, and my period did not show up. And I was like, that's strange. And my doctors were like, well, it can take 3 months to get your period back. So just give it some time. I was like, okay, I can do that. I was like, do you think my exercise and eating might have anything to do with it? I'm like, probably not, but maybe you could eat a little bit more and maybe you could exercise a little bit less. And so I was like, yeah, okay. So I exercised a smidge less and I ate maybe 100 calories more. And, 3 months came and went and no period. So then more investigation and more doctors and all sorts of ultrasounds and appointments. And eventually, 6 months later, they told me that I had this condition called hypothalamic amenorrhea. I'd never heard of it. I had been sort of looking online and really nothing was coming up. So I started my own blog at that time, I called it No Period Baby. That was sort of the genesis of this. And then, I ended up going through fertility treatments. I had 4 failed injectable cycles. Finally ended up, as we were waiting to do IVF for insurance purposes, I ended up ovulating on my own and actually got pregnant on that very first natural ovulation. And, over the time I'd sort of loosened up my eating restrictions and I'd gained most of the weight that I had lost back again. And I had sort of cut down on my exercise fairly significantly, but it was 18 months between when I went off the pill and when I finally got pregnant. So then when I was pregnant, I ended up on bed rest for significant Braxton Hicks contractions. And a friend that I'd met through my blog introduced me to a message board called the Fertile Thoughts Forum. And I started posting on that because I had a lot of extra time on my hands. And so there's a thread about women that had HA. And so I started posting. I shared my experience. I kept learning more and more and more, reading scientific literature because as a scientist, that's what I do. I have a question. I'm like, oh, let me go check and see what I can find. And eventually people on the board were like, you know so much about this. You should write a book. And I was like, yeah, maybe I should.
Right.
Because there was so little information about the condition that was available at the time. So I thought, I never pictured myself as an author. But I had something to say, and it turns out I had a lot to say because the book is 550 pages.
Oh my goodness, I love that. And I can completely relate to that story because that was my issue. I was a personal trainer for 10 years and I was super skinny. I worked out all the time. I thought I was so healthy. And that's not what you need for fertility at all. And yeah, I hear you. I wrote a book about my story too. That's 450 pages. So lots to say. I love that. Yeah. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about periods. We'll get into what HA is in a minute, but what is a healthy period? What should that even look like?
So, for me, the key event of a period is actually your ovulation. So knowing when you ovulate, I think that is so important for every person who is menstruating. I think it's something we should be learning about as a teenager because, often birth control comes in sometime down the line. Knowing what your cycles are like before you start on any kind of birth control, anything is so helpful because if you have issues down the line, you know what to come back to, what is normal for you. So that's what I really focus on is the ovulation part because the ovulation drives everything else. It drives your period. If you don't ovulate, you might get a period, you might not. That's called an anovulatory cycle if you're getting a bleed but not actually ovulating. Some people do that, and it's really helpful to know that that's what's going on with you. So I think that for me is the most important aspect of your cycle. And, in terms of the actual bleed itself, there's a wide range of what's normal from 3 to 7 days. It can be light, it can be heavy. And I think it's mostly about knowing what is normal for you. And then if there are changes from that, then doing some further investigation.
For sure. And I love that you say ovulation is kind of the key piece in all of it. And I always say, I want to go back to middle school and teach all these girls about their bodies, about ovulation, about their period, because we get so little of that. And it's crazy. We get to be 40 and not even realize we should be tracking ovulation. So
yes.
I love that. So let's talk about hypothalamic amenorrhea. What is that? Kind of tell us all about that. People hear it called HA. And so tell us what that is.
HA is just because hypothalamic amenorrhea is a mouthful and doesn't roll off the tongue very easily. So we abbreviate it as HA. So the name actually tells you a lot about the condition. So amenorrhea is basically not having a period for 3 months or more is the technical definition. So that's something that obviously you can decipher for yourself, as long as you're not on something that gives you an artificial bleed like the birth control pill or the ring or, one of those types of hormonal contraception that give you a fake bleed because you're not ovulating. It's nothing bad about the bleed. It's just you're not ovulating. So it's not a good sign of your personal period health. And then the hypothalamic part, the hypothalamus is a small organ in your brain that controls so many of our hormonal systems. So it controls the reproductive system. It puts out a hormone called gonadotropin releasing hormone, GnRH, which goes to the pituitary, which then puts out follicle stimulating hormone, which goes to our ovaries and grows the follicles and starts the whole process of working towards ovulation. It also sends out thyrotropin releasing hormone, so it controls the thyroid. It sends out, these names start getting a little hard to come off the tongue, so I'm going to start using abbreviations. So ACTH, which controls the stress system. It sends out ADH, antidiuretic hormone, so it controls some of the water balance in our bodies. So it's like this major control center. And it also takes in information from all of those hormonal systems, as well as from our digestive system. So it's like this kind of information synthesis and processing organ. And so the reason for hypothalamic amenorrhea is basically that the hypothalamus is suppressed or shut down. And so it's therefore not sending out the signals to start the follicular growth process. And therefore you don't have a menstrual cycle.
Gotcha. So how do we get this diagnosis? Is it just we self-diagnose if we don't have a period in 3 months? Or is this something where we're like, okay, no period. Now what? We go to our doctor and figure it out.
Yep. It's honestly a little of both. So I have a chapter in my book about diagnosis. Because it is a little bit tricky. It's what's called a diagnosis of exclusion. So basically you rule out other things that could be causing missing periods. And then you're kind of left with, okay, it's probably HA. So the other things that can cause missing periods, there is primary ovarian insufficiency, which is also known as premature menopause. That would be diagnosed by hormonal tests. So looking at your FSH and LH in particular, those are super elevated if you have a POI, or if you're in menopause itself, that can be another reason that you're not getting your period for people who are on the older side. You can have high levels of a hormone from the pituitary called prolactin. So it's called hyperprolactinemia. That can cause missing periods. If your thyroid is off, that can cause missing periods. There's a condition called polycystic ovarian syndrome that's often associated with missing or highly irregular periods, so very long extended times between ovulation and bleeds. So there are a fair number of things that do need to be investigated by your physician in order to rule them out. That said, the commonalities with HA are typically, I have 5 factors that I talk about in my book that can lead to HA. So it's underfueling, overexercise, weight loss, stress, and genetics are the 5 factors. So if you're somebody who's recently changed your diet, you've started restricting in some way, whether it be the amount or the nutrients, if you've lost weight in the last few years, and particularly if you're maintaining that lower weight, if you exercise a lot, maybe you think you're eating enough for how much you're exercising, maybe you're not. If you change your exercise, if you increase the intensity or if you increase the number of days, like all of those are things that could kind of lead you to say, maybe this is HA and maybe I should investigate a little bit further.
For sure. And is there any other symptoms that we might want to look out for? Or is it just the missing period?
So there are a lot of symptoms that kind of go along with typically the underfueling / exercise that ends up shutting down your hypothalamus. There's actually a sort of broader condition called relative energy deficiency in sport that encompasses all of these different components. So I really focus mostly on the amenorrhea part, but all of these other things can also be consistent in somebody who's generally underfueling for their body's needs. So often people are cold, when everybody else is warm, like cold at random times during the day, peeing a lot. And that's a really interesting one because that's involved with the lack of estrogen, and that thins the lining of your bladder so that urine penetrates more easily and quickly. And the penetration of urine into your bladder lining is actually what causes that signal for you to urinate. So if your lining's super thin, like they found that the bladder capacity of somebody with HA is about 50% of normal, and the need to urinate comes up about a quarter or 4 times more often than somebody who's not experiencing this. So that's another thing. Brittle hair and nails, anxiety, digestive issues. And that's a tricky one because people will start restricting, then start having constipation or bloating, feeling icky. And so they're like, oh, what food is it that I'm eating that's making me feel this way? And so then they restrict more food groups and more calories. And it's like this total slippery slope. So digestion can be another side effect. There can be immune issues, and then there are also longer term concerns that you don't necessarily notice on a daily basis, but bone density can be problematic. And I actually just had Dr. Cassandra Schufelt, who's a women's health physician specializing in heart. She's doing some research now that shows that there can be heart associated effects as well. So it's like this plethora of issues that come with this condition, but the missing menstrual cycle is like the easiest signal to see and to recognize as there being a problem.
Gotcha. And so you talk about the all-in recovery method. What is that?
So it's sort of developed, it's a nice catchy term for the things that I've recognized over the years as really being helpful for recovery. So one is eating a minimum of about 2,500 calories a day, which seems like a lot for a lot of what we're told. But especially for people who are active, that seems to be a place where your body is fully fueled and all of your systems can operate at their optimal level. It's supported by science. There are a couple of different studies that have been done that look at the daily intake of people who are weight stable, sort of operating normally. And that's what they find using 2 different methods. Older methods were simply self-reported intake, and that can get tricky because of all the psychological aspects of how much we want to eat and how much we want to tell people we're eating. So the recommendation of 2,000 calories a day is based off of those sort of older food diaries. And, that can be fine for somebody who's sedentary, but for somebody who's more on the active side, it's often not enough sustenance for everything our body does on a daily basis, plus our activity and movement. So that's component number 1. And not just eating that amount, but also eating all the different nutrients. So carbs, fats, and proteins. Each of those signals to our hypothalamus in different ways. And so I found that for people to recover, often they need to I call it babying your hypothalamus. So you have to eat all of those different things in order to sort of turn things back on again. So the next component is exercise. High intensity exercise in particular induces an increase in stress hormones, and stress hormones shut down the hypothalamus. So it's another way that not only does exercise burn energy, which when you're energy deficient can be problematic, but also there's that stress hormone component. Stress obviously also elevates your cortisol, which suppresses your hypothalamus. And so we also talk about minimizing stress as much as you can. I mean, that's a component that maybe we have a little bit less control over, but certainly the stress of, say, counting calories or weighing yourself on a daily basis, like we could remove those. And then also, I think a big part of All In is learning more about body image and body positivity and sort of how much our society encourages us to put appearance above health, and sort of reworking some of those thoughts and, learning a little bit more about the concept of, say, health at every size, and how you can't tell by how you look how healthy somebody is. And, maybe some of the things that we've been told are not necessarily as beneficial for us as they've been made out to be. So that's sort of the three pillars of All In. And it's worked for thousands of people to recover their periods over the 6 years since my book was published, and then the time that I've been working with people before that.
I love that. I love that. And we can learn way more about all those steps in the book.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. Like all the details, all the science behind it. I did a survey for the book of people that had HA, because one of the things that was really missing was data about, what was causing HA and how people felt during recovery and how long it took to recover and all of that kind of stuff. So
I love that. So to learn more, definitely buy the book, read the book. It sounds amazing. So we are going to take a short break. We're going to hear a word from our sponsors. We're going to come back and talk more practical tips, diving into some of the food pieces and the stress piece. So we'll do all that and more when we come back. Hey y'all, it's Coach Kayla here. I hope you are loving this episode as much as I am. We will be back in just a minute, but first, a word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by the Hormone P.U.Z.L.E Society, a women's health hub for fertility, hormones, and the business of coaching. Whether you're struggling to get pregnant with pesky hormone symptoms, or you're working to build a career in the fertility and women's health space, we have you covered. Visit our website at www.coachkayla.com to learn more on how we can help you. Text the keyword fertility to 615-257-8855 for your free fertility meal plan. All right. Welcome back. Welcome back. So let's dive into some practical tips. What are, we talked about some in the beginning, eating more, kind of tweaking your workouts, managing your stress, but let's dive into the food piece. Is there certain foods that we should be eating? Maybe certain food groups to stay away from, anything like that?
So I am very much a fan of everything has a place in your diet, and, especially if you've been restricting certain food groups. I mean, obviously, if you're allergic to something, then don't eat it. I don't want anybody to be sent to the hospital for this. But, generally I find that, the restrictive mindset that comes with having cut out certain food groups is actually more negative for our bodies than the actual food itself. So there's so much information out there about sugar is bad and gluten is bad and dairy is bad. And, it's a lot of it is taken from studies in very specific populations and then sort of broadcast out oh my gosh, this is something that all of us should be doing. And I just don't really buy that. The idea that if you eat a molecule of sugar, you're automatically going to get diabetes. It's no, our bodies don't work that way. It's our bodies are designed to digest sugar. And, obviously, yes, if the only thing you eat all day is sugar, then you're probably going to be pretty unhealthy. But by the same token, if the only thing you eat all day is kale, you're probably going to be pretty unhealthy. So I really encourage people to kind of go for a balance, and particularly not demonize any one particular food. Foods, I think all foods can have a place in a healthy diet. And particularly if you're working to recover a missing period, it's really, really hard to get enough energy if all you're eating is salad. You have to eat so much salad to get in the calories that your body needs. And your digestion is going to feel really crappy because it's really hard to digest all that fiber. So I do encourage people to think about, changing up and maybe eating some of the foods that you've not allowed yourself for a while, pizza and cake and cookies. Again, do I think that that's all you should be eating? No, but, as a tool for recovery and freedom, having a pizza, great. It's got lots of protein, it's got fat, it's got carbs, it's got energy. It's a good thing.
Yes.
So I think that's,
my favorite is doing cauliflower crust, lots of roasted veggies, maybe a little bit of goat cheese. Oh, delicious.
Yeah. And, so I think that for the most part, all foods can have a place in our diet. And, as I said, aside from genuine allergies, my niece is gluten intolerant. She has any gluten and she's got the worst stomach ache for 4 hours. It's very clear that she should not have gluten. But, a lot of people have kind of come to this quote unquote healthy eating premise. And like I was saying earlier, it's this slippery slope, and it takes up so much of your mental energy to always be like, no, I can't have that. I can't have that. Like just all that focus on food. It's like, spend that energy on other things and, broaden what you're thinking about. And it's like, you don't have to worry quite so much about what you're eating as I think we're sort of led to believe by a lot of people. So that's sort of my take on things.
For sure. I love that. And I completely agree. I talk a lot about 80-20. Like if you're eating 80% clean, that's for your body, 20% is for your soul. So eat the foods you love, eat the pizza, the chocolate cake at your friend's wedding, whatever it is. Like let's have it. Let's enjoy ourselves. We're human.
And if you have a day where it's 50-50, that's okay too, right?
I love it. So let's talk about stress. How does stress, we talked about that in the beginning. Stress can play a role here, but can you talk to us about how to kind of manage stress? I know we're never going to eliminate it, but how do we manage all this stress?
I think there are a few components to that. Like I'm not a psychologist, so like take all of this with grains of salt. But from my perspective, there are a few things that I commonly see people do that sort of add to normal daily life stress. And so things like comparison on social media, like if all you're looking at is people who are only showing you this very constrained part of their life and they're posing in certain ways and they look amazing and, you're trying to compare yourself and like you just feel less than, and that's kind of crappy. And so I really encourage people to look at your social media feed, see what things make you feel good and what things don't make you feel good, and get rid of the stuff that makes you feel crappy, because what's the point, right? So I love like my Instagram. I follow people of all body sizes, shapes, colors. There are a lot of anti-diet people. And it just makes me happy. Like I get to see all these people doing really amazing things in all different bodies, and nobody's super focused on their food. It's whatever you eat, great, eat it. And so I think that can be a really big drain on us mentally, is that comparison, that feeling like I'm not good enough and I have to, like, if I'm not eating as clean as this person, then, I'm just a horrible person and all of that. It's just draining. Another thing, especially as you're working on gaining weight, is scale and clothes. So in reality, the number on the scale tells us nothing of value. Like it doesn't tell you how healthy you are. There's no point that I can see in knowing what that number is, especially on a daily basis, especially based on our society and how fixated we are on you must be thin. It's like that number can really do a number on somebody's day. And so it's like, but why? Like, why are you putting yourself through that? If the number makes you feel like a bad person or like you're doing something wrong, take the number away and then you feel great. Nope. And same thing with clothes. Like your clothes should feel good on your body. And if you're working on gaining weight to reverse hypothalamic amenorrhea, like stretchy clothes that will grow with you and don't make you think constantly about your body growing and changing makes so much of a difference. So that's another tip. And I think just surrounding yourself with positivity in terms of, again, like body shape, size, color, all of that stuff. Like it's remarkable how much of a difference that can make. And just looking at images of amazing people doing amazing things and not focusing on their body size or whatever.
I love that. I love that. And talk to me a little more about exercise. We talked in the first half, over exercise can be a problem, especially if you have RA. And I think that was one of my issues. I was so thin and just my body fat was so low. So how do we know how much we can exercise and how much we should?
So let me start by saying that I fully believe that exercise is healthy for our bodies. I mean, moving your body, there are so many benefits. And it's actually really interesting. There was a study that I saw where they looked at health parameters with regards to exercise, and then they also included body size. And it's like everybody focuses on like, you're more likely to get diabetes if you're in a larger body, like blah, blah, blah. But interestingly, it also correlates really well with how much you're exercising. And so people who exercise more are less likely to suffer heart disease and diabetes and a myriad of other things. So, and yes, exercise and body size are correlated to some degree, but I think if we focus on the exercise piece and not the body size, it's like people can be healthy in a larger body, a smaller body. It's really about other choices that you're making. So exercise, yes, super healthy. I think really the biggest key is fueling your exercise well. Like the combination of exercise and underfueling, that's where it really gets problematic, because a couple things like Dr. Shufelt was talking about, especially if you're not getting a period, if you're exercising, your veins and arteries aren't stretching out like they're supposed to. So it's actually probably not beneficial. Same thing for bone density. If you're exercising and you're underfueled, and particularly if you're not getting a period, the exercise is not actually going to be beneficial for your bone density. So, I think and you look at, I seem to remember that when Michael Phelps was big with the Olympics, they were talking about how he was eating 8,000 calories a day. It's like, that's somebody who's fueling their exercise well. And the elite athletes know that. They know that you have to provide your body with the energy it needs, but somehow for those of us who are not elite athletes, it's so often it's like exercise more and eat less and you're going to be healthier. It's like, no, that's not actually it. That's not actually good advice. So in terms of exercise generally, I think sort of cross training, doing different types of exercise is really beneficial. But for period recovery, I strongly recommend cutting out high intensity exercise for the time being while you're working on recovery. So that means things like walking are fine, like very light weightlifting, maybe some Pilates, something like that. Just cutting out the HIIT, the CrossFit, for me, the ice hockey, so just sort of taking a little break. Yeah.
Yeah. For me, it was spin class. So I had to back off on that boot camp. Yep. My mom used to say, I think you're working out too much. And I'd be like, no, I'm not. What are you talking about?
Yep. Yeah. Sometimes mothers do know best.
I love it. So how important is it to have a coach to help you through this? Hiring somebody like yourself or myself to kind of work through this?
Certainly people can do this on their own. I do think that having outside guidance, somebody else to look at what you're eating and sort of bring your attention to areas that might be problematic or where you could make some changes that would be helpful. I think that can be a big help to people. It's hard because everybody has different financial circumstances and everything. So, I think doing what you can, if you can afford a coach, I offer sliding scales. I don't advertise that I do, but if anybody ever comes to me and says, hey, I can't afford this, can you help me? I'm like, absolutely, because I'm not in this for the money. The money is nice. Obviously, I do need to make a living, but I'm really in it to help people. And so, I think so many of us are, because it's a passion. It's a calling. It's like helping people to get through, things that were harder for us because the information wasn't out there or whatever. And I think having a bit of guidance, especially when other medical professionals are saying, oh, it doesn't matter, or do this, go on the birth control pill. It's like, a little bit of a different viewpoint can sometimes be really helpful.
For sure. And I love that you do the sliding scale. We do that too. And it's very helpful because there's all different financial situations and we don't ever want somebody to feel like they can't get the help they need because of finances.
Yeah.
So, I love that. Well, cool. Well, tell us where we can find you. Where can we learn more about working with you?
So my website is at www.noperiodnowwhat.com. My book is noperiod.info/book for an easy, quick way to get there. So everything can go through my website. I'm on Instagram and, Instagram would be another good place to find me. I've kind of toned down on my work with clients at the moment because I'm working on translating the book into French, German, and Spanish. So that's kind of been my focus, but, I'm always happy to work with people and,
Love that. It's amazing. Well, before we close out, Nicola, it's been so fun having you here. Thank you so much. I would love to hear any final thoughts, words of advice, or just something you want to leave us with.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate your time in doing this. And I think really one of the biggest things that I've come to learn through my years on this journey, both my personal journey and helping other people, is how much our society focuses on appearance over health. And I think that that's really a negative for all of us, men, women, people in smaller bodies, people in larger bodies. I think the more that we can each individually get away from the idea of that association between appearance and health, the better off we all will be.
For sure. For sure. I completely agree with that. Oh, I love it. Well, thank you again for being here. It's so fun to talk to you.
Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you, ladies, for listening to the Hormone Puzzle Podcast. Until next time, bye. Hey, hang on just 1 second before you go. I want to make sure that you are aware of all of the amazing free resources that I have for you on my website at CoachKayla.com. From a fertility meal plan, a cycle syncing quick start guide, a holistic healing cookbook, as well as master classes, blog posts by me and some amazing experts in the fields of fertility, hormones, and nutrition. So many wonderful resources that will help you on your journey. And I wish there had been something like this when I was going through my 2 years of infertility, but there just wasn't. And so that's why I decided to create all of this for you. So make sure that you go and check it out and you take advantage of this plethora of support that I have provided for you. And spoiler alert, these were some of the same tricks and the same foods that I used to get myself pregnant, not once, but twice, even after my doctors said that I couldn't. So I know that these things work. So make sure you take advantage of that. And I cannot wait for you to be my next success story. So thanks, love. See you soon. Thanks for tuning in today to the Hormone Puzzle Podcast. Check out the show notes for today's episode at CoachKayla.com. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and leave a review. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you next week.